So as you guys know, The Wonderful Lady B is historical fiction, and seeing that there is going to be a new episode on Friday, I thought I would take a moment and list a few events that have happened, are currently happening in the time that we are in, which is the summer of 1911. All of these events will either come into play or they are influencing attitudes among the characters. I also think it's important to remember that history doesn't happen in a vacuum, and multiple large changes were happening politically and socially at the time that this was happening. I was very spoiled and got a wonderful international history education in high school. But for those of you who didn't, I'm going to put everything on the screen. So if you want to look more into those events or you want to further your own education about a certain subject you're passionate about, you can. A few months prior to the story, in March of 1911, the worst industrial accident happens in the United States. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire killed about 125 garment workers, most of which were young immigrant women. This would start a massive overhaul about unionization, about factory workers' rights, about the rights of women. I've mentioned before that Barbara does a lot of charitable work, and I think this becomes her pet project. Though she married into a high-class family, I don't think Barbara forgets for 1 second that if she had been like the rest of these girls and immigrated to America, this could have been easily her fate. I think she and Everett have had a couple fights about her involving the kids in outreach for these women. Though it was fashionable and still is to be involved in a charity at a time like this, I think that Barbara takes it a step further and it makes Everett uncomfortable because she wants to go and actually provide aid for these women and be there and teach her stepchildren that, you know, this is some people's lives and you need to understand it and we need to be able to do what we can. Next up is the collapsing of the Third Duma in the Russian Empire. Russia has been tanking since the Russo-Japanese War, and this is the third established Duma, and Nicholas is just not about listening to any of these people. It doesn't necessarily affect Barbara or the DeVeres now, but it's going to affect future characters in the series. Also, highly suggest that you just do a quick little dive into Slavic and Russian mythology, because she's coming! Since we're talking about the Russo-Japanese War, the events that followed the victory that Japan had prompted them to take over rule of Korea. That happened in 1910, so Korea's been under Japanese occupation for about a year at this point. Our intrepid Mr. H, or Hyuk, probably left a couple years before that, but he's still sending money back to his family to keep them out of the eyesight of the Japanese government and make sure they're okay. Again, hasn't happened yet, but will affect multiple future characters. The 1911 revolution is about to happen in China. Also, Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud are having a lover's spat at this point. And if you watched my story, I mentioned a character named Miriam, who is a research assistant at the Vienna Institute of Occult Practices. And she can't fucking stand this man! I will see you all on Friday.